There was a lipstick stain on the rim of my coffee mug. That wouldn't have been strange if Mira hadn't been gone for 4 days, and if I hadn't washed every single dish in this house the night before. I stared at it for a long time. Cherry red, the kind Mira wore only when she wanted to feel dangerous. She called it midnight voltage. I once joked it made her look like someone who'd rob a man of both his wallet and dignity. She laughed. I was only half joking. I stood there holding the cup, kitchen light buzzing faintly above me, cat rubbing against my leg like everything was normal. But something in my gut twisted. And that was before I walked past the laundry room and noticed her bathrobe wasn't hanging where it should have been. The purple one. The one I bought her last Christmas. Embroidered with a tiny gold M on the collar. She never traveled with it. She said hotel robes felt more luxurious, more clean slate. That robe never left the house. So why wasn't it on the hook? And why were there 2 coffee cups in the sink? I didn't say anything. I didn't go snooping. I just went upstairs, opened the bedroom door, and there she was. Kendra, Myra's best friend. And also the last person I expected to see lounging on my bed, wearing my wife's robe, scrolling through TikTok like she paid the mortgage. Oh, she said, casually, as if this was normal. Hey, Myra's flight landed early. She stopped to grab smoothies. She looked at me like I was the one intruding. I said nothing, just nodded, turned, and went back downstairs. Then I heard the front door unlock. Mira stepped in, suitcase wheels clicking against the hardwood. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, which was already weird. She saw me, then looked over my shoulder, and froze. The kind of freeze that only comes when you've lost control of the narrative. I didn't smile. I didn't yell. I just said, real calm, "Girls trip, huh?" And then I sat down in the chair across from her, slowly, like I was settling in to watch something I already knew would hurt. Mira didn't say anything right away. She just stood in the doorway, one hand still on the suitcase handle, the other clutching a bright green smoothie with a biodegradable straw poking out like a flag of surrender. Her mouth was slightly open like she had something ready to say, a greeting, an excuse, a lie, but forgot the words mid-thought. I leaned back in the chair, letting the silence do most of the work. Kendra was still upstairs. I could hear her laugh faintly through the ceiling. A scroll, a giggle, maybe a voice memo. That robe made her bold. Mira finally walked in, too casually, and set her smoothie down on the counter like she had just come back from yoga and not from 4 days of radio silence. "Hey," she said, with that light, nervous tone people use when they pretend nothing is wrong. "Long trip," I replied, not looking at her, just watching the condensation crawl down the side of her cup. "Yeah." The airport was chaos. We had delays. She gave a half smile, then added, "It's crazy out there." I looked up. Crazy, huh? So crazy Kendra forgot where she lived? She blinked. That half smile cracked for a second, then tried to hold. She missed her flight, and she needed somewhere to crash. I told her she could wait here until I got back. Huh, so she broke in? Because the spare key hasn't been under the flower pot in 2 years. That landed. Mira looked down, adjusted the strap on her purse, then gave a small, almost imperceptible shrug. She asked for the code. I gave it to her. I didn't think it would be a big deal. "It's not the code I'm worried about," I said quietly. I let the words hang. She looked at me for a long moment. Not angry, not defensive, just tired. Like she'd just finished running a race she didn't train for. "You're reading into things again," she said. "You always spiral when I take space." There it was. The first shift. From guilt to offense. It was faster than I thought it'd come. I nodded slowly. "You're right. I do spiral. Especially when your best friend is in your robe, in our bed, after a girl's trip you barely texted me through." I was unplugging. "You know that." "No. I knew that's what you said you'd do. But even when you unplug, you post." I checked. Stories every night. Just not for me. Her lips tightened. "You check my socials?" I checked my phone, which didn't ring, or buzz, or matter, for 4 days. She stepped back like the air between us had shifted pressure. Her eyes darted once to the stairs, then back to me. And I swear, in that half second, I saw it, the calculation. The silent debate happening behind her pupils. Tell him now, or double down. She chose to double down. "Clayton, you're acting like I committed a crime. I went on a trip. With my friends. I came home. That's it." I stood up. Not fast. Not angry. just enough to make her step back again. I walked past her and opened the fridge. "Want to know something weird?" I asked, pulling out the bottle of coconut water I never touch. "You hate this stuff?" "But someone drank it. Half the bottle's gone." She didn't answer. "And the guest towel?" I added. "Still damp. But the washing machine hasn't run since last week." I closed the fridge. "See, Mira, the house, it remembers things. You forget, but it doesn't." She looked like she wanted to scream or cry or vanish. But all she did was cross her arms and say, "This is insane." "No," I said softly. "Insane would be thinking a man wouldn't notice when his wife starts treating their home like a hotel lobby." The doorbell rang. Mira flinched. I smiled for the first time all morning. Expecting someone? She didn't move. Neither did I. The doorbell rang again. And that was when the real unraveling began. The doorbell rang again. This time longer. Not the polite single press you give your neighbor when you want to borrow sugar. This was heavier. Intentional. The kind of ring someone uses when they know the person inside doesn't want them there. Mira didn't move. She just stared at the door like it had teeth. I tilted my head. "You gonna get that?" She blinked. I don't know who that is." Her voice was too tight. Like she rehearsed saying that in the car and hadn't expected the need to use it this early. "Well," I said, stepping around her, "let's both find out together." I opened the door slowly. It wasn't who I expected. A man stood on the porch, maybe mid-30s. Athletic, not overly tall, dressed in a gray zip-up and joggers. He had one of those faces that was trying not to be nervous, but didn't quite pull it off. His eyes flicked past me into the house, like he was hoping to see someone else. "Oh," he said, his voice cracking just slightly. Is Mira here?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. Behind me, I heard her intake of breath, sharp, like she'd been punched in the ribs. Her smoothie made a soft thunk on the counter as she picked it up with trembling fingers. "Matt?" she said, the name sliding out like a secret she'd locked behind her teeth. He gave an awkward wave. "You left your charger in the rental. I figured I'd swing by before heading to the airport. I texted you." His voice trailed off when he realized what he was looking at. Me standing next to her. Her pale as a ghost. My wedding band. Her missing one. Mira tried to recover. "Matt, this is Clayton. My husband." Matt's face contorted. Embarrassment? Regret? Shock? Maybe all three. Oh wow. I thought you were divorced." There it was. 3 words. That was all it took. I smiled. Not bitter. Not mocking. Just hollow. Myra's mouth opened, then closed. Then opened again. But no sound came out. I turned to Matt. "Appreciate the honesty. You want to come in? We've got smoothies, apparently." Matt raised both hands and stepped back. No. I should go. Sorry. I just didn't realize." And he left. Practically jogged down the front steps like the driveway was on fire. The door clicked shut behind him. Mira still hadn't moved. "So," I said after a long pause, "that wasn't exactly yoga and cocktails." She dropped into a chair like her bones stopped holding her together. Both hands around her cup. White knuckles. Her mouth moved, but still nothing came out. "You told him we were divorced," I said. Didn't even upgrade it to separated. Just straight to divorced. Clean break. No loose ends. She shook her head slowly. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it to me," I said, voice calm, quiet, measured. "Because I'm standing in a kitchen that smells like someone else's cologne, talking to a man who thought I didn't exist. I wasn't trying to hurt you." That line. That tired, cowardly line. I laughed. "No, Mira. You were just trying to erase me." Silence. Then, finally, her voice, small, pathetic, but real. "I didn't think you'd care." That hit harder than anything else. Not the robe. Not the second coffee cup. Not even Matt. But that sentence. Because it meant she'd already grieved me. Already moved on. Already painted me into a version of her life where I was a footnote. And somehow, I didn't even notice. The house was silent for nearly 5 minutes after Matt left, and somehow that was louder than any screaming match we could have had. Mira didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She just sat there staring at the back of her smoothie cup like the ingredients label would give her a script for how to fix this. I watched her. Not like a husband. Not even like a man who'd been betrayed. I watched her like someone finally seeing the magician's hands after years of being hypnotized by the show. She had always been good with words. Clever, disarming. But right now, she was out of dialogue. Her silence was its own confession. Upstairs, footsteps moved. Kendra. I had almost forgotten she was still in the house. But now, hearing her light tread above us, reality snapped back like a rubber band. I stood slowly and walked toward the base of the stairs. Kendra, I called up, calm as ever. She responded with that syrupy voice she used when she knew she'd overstayed her welcome. Yeez, come down. There was a pause, then the soft sound of bare feet on carpet. She descended the stairs wearing the same robe, my wife's robe. Only now it was loosely tied, revealing a glimpse of the tank top underneath. She looked like she had just rolled out of someone else's life. Mira didn't move. Her eyes didn't meet Kendra's. Kendra glanced at both of us, clearly sensing the tension but acting like she wasn't the epicenter of it. Is everything okay? I laughed under my breath. That depends. You want to explain how long you've had the door code? Her expression didn't change. A few weeks. Mira gave it to me after I house sat for her while you were at that conference. I turned to Mira. Funny, I don't remember us going anywhere that month. We canceled the trip, remember? Mira looked like her soul was trying to exit her body. Kendra looked at her, confused, then narrowed her eyes. Wait, you told me you guys were in Boston. You even showed me a flight confirmation. Myra's voice came out brittle. I didn't think you'd come over if you knew we were both here. Kendra blinked. So you lied to me too? Now the air shifted. For the first time, Kendra wasn't defending Mira. She was questioning her. Her arms folded across her chest, and the way she stepped back slightly told me everything. This alliance, this little secret sisterhood they'd been running behind my back, it wasn't as solid as they'd thought. Hold on, I said. Let's just clear this up. I pointed to Kendra, were told we were out of town, so you came here while Mira was alone. Mira, I looked back at my wife. You used our canceled trip as cover so you could have the house for what, exactly? Neither of them answered. And then, finally, Kendra cracked first. You know what? She said sharply, directing it at Mira. You made me look like an idiot. You promised me this was handled. You said he knew. That it was processed. That you were done with this. I felt something inside me go quiet. Done with what? I asked. But Kendra froze. She realized too late that she'd said too much. Mira stood up so fast her chair scraped hard against the tile. Kendra, don't. But the damage was already done. Kendra, I said, my voice dropping an octave. What exactly did Mira say I knew? Kendra hesitated, opened her mouth, then scoffed. No, I'm not doing this. You two can figure out your mess. I'm not your scapegoat. She stormed back upstairs, this time without the robe trailing behind her. Mira stood there, face pale, hands shaking. She looked at me like she wished she could rewind the whole week and make different choices. You told her I knew? I asked, my voice like ice breaking over a frozen pond. She didn't answer. Knew what, Mira? And then, just as she opened her mouth to speak, my phone buzzed. One new notification. AirDrop request. File from Kendra's iPhone. Titled, Ask Her About Sunday. I accepted it, and what I saw changed everything. The video started playing the moment I tapped accept. No intro, no title screen, just shaky iPhone footage taken from the inside of a car. The camera was angled through a windshield, showing the front steps of a small Airbnb-style bungalow. For a second, I wasn't even sure what I was looking at, until I saw Mira. She stepped out of the house barefoot, her hair messy, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. She walked toward the passenger side of a silver rental, the same one Matt had driven to our door, and handed him one of the cups. He was already outside, leaning casually against the hood, smiling like a man who was both comfortable and claimed. Then Mira did something that made my stomach cave in. She kissed him. Not a quick, guilty peck. Not an accidental brush. She kissed him like they'd done it 100 times. Like they had years, not just a weekend. Her fingers slid along his neck. His hand went to the small of her back. When she pulled away, she smiled and said something I couldn't hear, but he laughed, and they walked back inside like they were returning to their place. The video cut there. I stood in the kitchen, phone in hand, and the silence of the house suddenly became unbearable. Mira hadn't seen the video yet, hadn't realized what Kendra had just sent me, but she was watching me closely now, sensing the shift in my posture, the hard stillness that only comes when a person breaks inward. You want to explain Sunday? I asked, turning the screen to face her. Her expression changed before the video even finished loading. That same face she'd made when she saw Kendra in the robe. Frozen, startled, cornered. "That's not what it looks like," she said, because of course she did. "Oh good," I muttered. "Because it looks like you spent your girl's trip playing house with a man who thought I was already erased." "It was a mistake," she blurted. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. You kissed him like he was your husband." "I was drunk. You were holding 2 cups of coffee," I snapped. "No one makes out in broad daylight holding a medium roast and calls it tequila's fault." She sat down hard, hands over her mouth. I think she thought the worst part was over, like the lie had been caught, the wound had been opened, and now we could start bleeding and bandaging. She had no idea the bleeding hadn't even started. I looked at the airdrop again. The file name still sitting there on the screen. "Ask her about Sunday," which meant there was more. "Kendra filmed this," I said slowly. "But not for me. That wasn't some act of justice. That was insurance. So what exactly did she think she might need it for?" Mira looked up, confused, then terrified. "You told her this was handled. You told her I knew. You lied to me. You lied to her. So now I'm wondering." I stepped forward. "What else did you lie about?" "I didn't sleep with him," she said quickly, the words rushed and shaky, like if she got them out fast enough they might sound true. "Didn't ask," I replied, because I didn't need to ask. I could see it in her eyes, the desperation, the damage control reflex. The way she jumped to answering a question no one had asked because her brain was still sprinting through all the lies she hadn't been caught in yet. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I cut her off. "Don't. Just don't. You've said enough useless things today." I walked toward the stairs. Behind me, I could hear her stand up quickly, chair legs screeching against tile. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To get the spare bedding." "For who?" I turned to look at her, dead in the eyes. "For me." She flinched. "You're sleeping in the guest room?" "No," I said. "You are." Then I walked upstairs, past the room where Kendra had locked herself in, past the wedding photos still hanging in the hallway, past the scent of her perfume still clinging to the sheets. In the guest closet, I pulled out the backup comforter. Soft and used, still folded neatly like it had been waiting for this moment all along. And for the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was waking up. I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry. I was past that. Anger comes with energy, and by now, all of mine had been drained. What I felt that night in the guest room wasn't fury. It was a kind of blank space, like the floor had dropped out beneath me, but somehow I was still standing. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard her crying through the walls. Not loud, not performative, just a soft, repetitive sound like a faucet that hadn't been shut all the way. Part of me thought about getting up. Another part stayed perfectly still. I didn't know her comfort. Not anymore. At 3:11 a.m., I heard a knock. Not at my door. At Kendra's. Their muffled voices started low, but I couldn't make out the words. Then came the sharp whispering. The kind of whispering people do when they're still trying to hide things even after the truth has already been dragged out into the light. I heard Mira say, "You don't understand," followed by Kendra's harsh reply. "No, you don't understand what you've done." Then the hallway creaked. A few seconds later, my door tapped. "Clayton." It was Kendra's voice, softer now. I opened it. Just enough to show her I wasn't sleeping, not enough to invite her in. Her makeup was gone. Robe replaced with leggings and a hoodie. She looked tired, and maybe a little afraid. "I need to talk," she said. I stepped back and nodded toward the chair in the corner. She sat while I remained standing, arms crossed. "Myra's spiraling," she said. "But you know that already." "What I don't know," I said, "is what you meant when you said she told you I knew." Kendra sighed, brushing a hand through her hair. "She told me you two had been separated for months, that you agreed to give her space, that she had her own room, her own life, and that the only reason she hadn't filed yet was logistics. She said you were emotionally unavailable, cold, disinterested." I didn't flinch. Sounds like her favorite fiction. Yeah, well, I believed her. We all did. Even Matt. I sat on the edge of the bed, still silent. She was seeing him before the trip, Kendra admitted. That rental wasn't their first time. It was just the first time they stopped hiding it. My breath caught. Before the trip? Kendra nodded. I caught her one night texting someone, real late. She laughed it off, said it was an old friend. But the way she tilted her phone away from me, I knew. I just didn't want to be the one to say it out loud. And Sunday? That wasn't supposed to happen either. She told Matt she wasn't ready to go public. But then she got drunk at dinner, actually drunk this time, and started telling him about furniture she'd buy if she lived with him, which bedroom she'd turn into an office. He thought it meant something, that maybe she was ready. I rubbed my face. It was all becoming clear now, how effortlessly she had rewritten our life in her head, how long she'd been living two versions of herself. Kendra leaned forward, voice lower. But there's something you should know about the flight back. She lied to him too. Told Matt she missed her flight and had to stay an extra night. But I saw her ticket. It was scheduled Monday morning all along. I narrowed my eyes. Why lie? She stayed behind without him. Alone. And not at the bungalow. She booked a separate hotel room. Didn't tell anyone where. Off the grid. She said she needed one night to figure out what she really wanted before she went back to reality. And did she figure it out? Kendra laughed dryly. Apparently not. She came home, walked into a lie, and found me in her robe. And then Matt showed up. That's three realities colliding in one kitchen. You do the math. I stood up slowly. Why are you telling me this now? Kendra hesitated. Because I'm done being part of it. I'm not covering for her. I'm not being her alibi, her therapist, her human shield. She made her mess. I'm just stepping over it now. As she reached the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, I never liked how she talked about you. I thought you were boring. But now, I think you were just steady. And she hated being reminded of what real stability looked like. Then she was gone, and I was alone again. But this time, something was different. The fog was clearing. And for the first time since this all began, I wasn't wondering what Mira had done. I was wondering what I was going to do next. By morning, I had already packed a bag. Not to leave permanently, not yet. I wanted her to see it. I wanted her to feel the same uncertainty I had lived in for months. Let the questions eat her. Let the silence do the talking. When I walked down to the kitchen, she was already there. Hoodie, messy hair, eyes swollen from a night of crying. There was a bowl of cereal in front of her she hadn't touched. Just floating shapes in lukewarm milk. She looked up when she heard me, but didn't say anything. I grabbed my coffee thermos from the drying rack. Her gaze dropped immediately. I could almost hear her thinking, he never takes coffee to go. I opened the fridge, took a yogurt, shut it quietly. You're leaving? She asked, her voice hoarse. For now, I replied, unscrewing the thermos lid. I've got meetings. You don't have to go. I do. She nodded like she understood, but she didn't. Not even close. Mira was used to chaos. Emotional earthquakes, dramatic exits, and teary reunions. But what she didn't know how to deal with was this. A quiet man who'd finally stopped asking questions. That was my only advantage. She stood up and stepped into my path. Clayton, please don't freeze me out. I know I messed up. I know I broke things. But if you just talk to me. I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, she seemed small. Not fragile. Not broken. Just reduced. Like the version of herself she tried to sell to everyone else had finally stopped working, even on her. Talking is what got us here, I said. So let's not pretend words are the solution. I moved past her. She followed me to the front door. Where are you even staying? At a hotel. Which one? I looked at her. You don't need to know that. She flinched. Like I'd struck her. I paused before stepping out. You asked me to be honest. So here it is. I don't trust you. Not your stories. Not your timelines. Not your pauses between sentences. This isn't punishment. It's self-defense. She grabbed my wrist gently. I want to fix this. You don't even know what this is yet, I said, pulling my arm away. I left the house without slamming the door. No dramatic music. No heavy breathing. Just silence. At the hotel, I booked a room under my middle name. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be someone outside of her orbit. Someone whose name didn't show up on the same dinner reservations, or bank statements, or therapy intake forms. I ordered a coffee in the lobby and sat down with my laptop. On the screen, I opened a blank document. No title yet. Just a blinking cursor. The kind of silence that asks, what now? I started writing. Not a letter. Not a message. Just everything I hadn't said in the house. Everything I swallowed when she looked at me like I was disposable. Everything I screamed inside the moment I saw that video of her and Matt. It poured out of me. Not as rage, but as clarity. It was like draining poison out of a wound you didn't know you'd been living with. I don't know how long I sat there, writing. Maybe hours. At some point my phone buzzed. Mira, 9 missed calls. 1 new voicemail. One text message, please come home. We need to talk. I didn't answer. I didn't delete it either. Instead, I clicked over to our shared banking app, and I froze. She had withdrawn $4,000 from an account she hadn't touched in over a year. A savings pot we built together. Emergency fund. Quiet weekend getaways. Future plans. She emptied it in one morning. And the transaction location? Redacted car rentals, downtown branch. She wasn't chasing forgiveness. She was running again. And this time, I wasn't planning to follow. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just far enough outside the city that the noise faded and the sky got bigger. I needed space. Not just from her, but from everything we built that slowly became a prison with soft lighting and matching bath towels. Somewhere along Route 17, I pulled into a park I hadn't visited in years. There was a bench by a lake, almost completely empty except for a woman walking her dog and a teenager skipping stones. I sat and just breathed. It was strange how peaceful it felt to not be needed, to not be manipulated or pitted or lied to. When I finally drove back into town the next morning, I didn't go to our house. I went to a lawyer's office, not to start a war, but to prepare for peace. I wanted everything documented. No surprises. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. That afternoon, I texted Mira. There's a letter for you on the kitchen table. Please read it before calling. Then I drove home. She was there when I arrived, sitting on the stairs, hair tied back, wearing the same sweatshirt I bought her on our 3rd anniversary. She didn't look angry. She looked empty. She didn't speak as I walked past her, just followed me in like a shadow. The house was still. It smelled like lemon cleaner. A single duffel bag sat by the door. I thought you left, she said. I did, I replied. Now I'm just here to finish. I walked into the kitchen and placed the sealed envelope on the table. Inside was everything I needed to say, everything too final for spoken words. I turned back to her. You can stay here, I said, until the paperwork's sorted, but I'll be gone by tomorrow. She looked at me, eyes already watering. So that's it? No, I said gently. This was it. You just didn't see it when it was still breathing. I expected her to beg, to plead, to weaponize tears the way she had in the past. But instead, she nodded. Maybe for the first time, she saw me not as someone to convince, but someone already gone. She stepped forward, trembling slightly. Clay, are you really never coming back? And I looked at her, not with hatred, not with heartbreak, just calm. I already did, I said. For 4 years straight. Every day, I came back, and back, and back again, until there was nothing left of me. I walked to the door, picked up my bag, then paused. You once told me I was safe, I said. Like that was a bad thing. She didn't respond. I opened the door. I finally realized something. I added, safe people don't need to be chased. They're just home. And I left. Not in pieces. Not bitter. Just done. It's been 8 months. I live in a quiet apartment now. Nothing fancy. I bought a new coffee mug. Different color. No inside jokes printed on the side. I still wake up early, but the silence doesn't scare me anymore. I take walks at night. I read books I never made time for. Sometimes, I even catch the sunset. Not because I'm waiting for something to change, but because I'm finally standing still. Mira signed the divorce papers. No lawyers. No drama. Just quiet acceptance. She didn't try to claw me back. Maybe she understood that some things, once lost, don't echo. They just end. I don't know what happened to Matt. Or Kendra. And honestly, I don't care. People ask me if I'd ever fall in love again. Maybe. But this time, I won't do it while abandoning myself. Because now I know. The right person won't need you to break in half just to make them feel whole. And sometimes, healing doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from finally walking away and meaning it.